And I have now started the recording. Reid has his screen up. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me today. Really happy that we're going to get a chance to give you guys some more information. Really excited to see what Reid has for us today. Again, I know I just did this whole, introduction and everything, but I wasn't recording back then. So Reid's going to be giving us a little bit more information, on improving construction profitability. Reid's working with ClockShark, which is a great time tracking app, especially if you are a construction company. And, he'll be giving you all this information, and we'll follow up with a little bit of Q&A. If you have any questions during the demo event, again, feel free to submit them in the chat. We'll circle back at the end. But that's really all I got for you. Reid, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. If not, chat in and Richard will let me know. But welcome to Improving Construction Profitability, the Accountant and Bookkeeper Edition. This is a ClockShark presentation that we put together. And before we get started, let me explain what we hope to achieve today. Basically, we want to turn your rock stardom up to 11. We want to do that by making sure that your clients say, I really could not have done this without you. So we know that accountants and bookkeepers can provide tons of value, so long as they are a trusted advisor and not just relegated to counting the beans, as it were. We know that the lifeblood of any business is cash, and of course, finding the trends and the value in the data is critical for growing a successfully resilient business. And for construction clients, that's even more true because of how cash intensive the business really is. So to really win, you got to have a great team in your corner, because running a construction company is super hard to do. We know, we have been there. So let me introduce some of my friends. This is Cliff and Paul. Cliff is the CEO of ClockShark. That's the company that I work for. And Paul is a construction writer. Paul's got 4 books that he's written that are available on his website or on Amazon if anybody is interested in checking any of those out. He is also a regular contributor to the ClockShark blog. So feel free to stop by, check out some of his stuff. It's free information, free advice, and of course, always good to email your construction clients with links to these wonderful articles. So I encourage you guys to do that. But before the current gigs that these guys have, Cliff ran a telecommunications construction company. And of course, Paul was the construction project manager who worked on over 120 projects in 6 countries over the span of 28 years. So needless to say, with all of that experience, these guys have a few ideas on how to improve the profitability of construction companies and construction projects. So they got together and they made this big webinar. They took 79 tips and ideas and packaged it together to present to the owners and managers of construction companies. But those guys, the owners and managers, they're going to need some help from you. So here's what we did to help you help them. We took all of the tips, and by we, that's me, Reid Givens. I work at ClockShark, and of course, Richard Ropa is also on the line from Quasar Cowboy Consulting. But we sat down and we looked at this big webinar geared for the owners and managers of construction companies, and we identified the areas where accountants and bookkeepers could really help out. So now we would like to take and share those ideas with you over the next 15 or so minutes so that you can help your clients become more profitable and turn your profit-making rock stardom up to 11. So that's kind of what we want to do. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first area where construction profitability can take a hit is on the pricing phase. So I'm going to look at a few situations to see how you guys can help out your clients in that phase. And the first one is, are we even going to get paid? So it always amazes me that there are so many companies out there desperate enough for work that they are willing to work for clients that either pay really slow or are known to be in financial trouble. I mean, imagine being halfway through a project and then the client goes bankrupt. That is not a good place to be in. And unfortunately, in this industry, it does happen. What's even worse is if you could have seen it coming, but didn't, because either they didn't do their homework or just kind of buried their head in the sand and didn't want to believe it. We wanted to work, we got to work, didn't really think about it. This is a problem that happens more often than we'd like to think it does in construction. So our rockstar tip is basically just to periodically let your construction customer knows who is slow paying and who isn't. What's the average time it takes from invoicing for money to actually come in? who's better and worse than that average. If a new project shows up that you've worked with in the past, look it up, see what their track record has been, and share it with your client. They've probably forgotten how it used to go. So being able to anticipate that ahead of time, that's going to be helpful. If a new project comes up from a new client, somebody you haven't worked with before, ask, what's the creditworthiness of this customer? Often the construction managers, they get really busy either trying to find new business or just to keep the projects moving that they have now, that they forget to think about stuff like that. So the best thing to do is just keep asking questions like that until it becomes second nature. So when they're pitching a new piece of work, they hear your voice in the back of their heads going, what's this going to look like? How's it going to pay? I hate to use the word training, but I think that's exactly what needs to be done. Keep saying it, keep asking the right questions. Eventually, it'll become second nature. So the next one is, do we have the knowledge and experience to even get this job done? So we've seen contractors that win a project and then scramble around to hire staff with the right skill sets to do the work. This is bad. It's not a good place to be. Some projects are really easy if you have the guys who know how to do the work, but really, really hard for people who don't. So falling into this trap almost always means that the project was underbid for the amount of time it's actually going to take to complete the project, even if the bid was competitive. So our rockstar tip on this one is, if a new project starts and you see a bunch of new hires getting added onto payroll, then that's a red flag. We need to dig into this and see what's going on. Report overall labor burden, forecasted cash flow, talk to them about how what's going on now is going to change that, and what it's going to look like in the future. You may not be able to stop them from taking on projects that are too much of a stretch, but the sooner you realize that there's a problem, the better off everybody's going to be. Because if you're going to need to finance payroll, it's better to know that 90 days out than it is to know it a week out. And of course, if you check back in the CCAN archives, there is a webinar that Tanya did, who I believe is with us today, that talks a lot about labor burden, that kind of stuff. So I highly encourage you guys to go back and check that out if you haven't seen it yet. So next one is, do we have the resources available to do this project? Again, scrambling around looking to hire new staff and project managers off the street when you get a new awarded project is not where you want to be. Wrong project team obviously can lead to poor execution, which impacts your reputation, and it can cause you to lose money on the project. But human resources are not the only concern. Other resources are equipment, and some projects require a lot or really expensive equipment. So can your client afford that kind of equipment? Or is that equipment even available? Or is it going to have really, really long lead times, which is going to delay the work and cost money? All things that need to be taken into consideration. So when a new project gets started, ask about what kind of cash is going to need to be available when for equipment. Ask them, are there contingency plans in place if equipment gets delayed? Because a project that goes on hold is not only expensive in cash, but it's going to affect morale and the reputation. So trying to stay on top of that, very important thing to do. The next one when pricing projects is going to be, can we even compete on price? Because if you can't, you're not going to get the bid. It might be a waste of time. If you know ahead of time, or rather if your client knows ahead of time, who the other companies are that are bidding on the project, if they're better at that kind of work and it's not your core competency, you're probably not going to have the best price. Or maybe you're bidding against companies that are really desperate for the work, like we talked about earlier. So if you know that you can't be competitive on price, it may just be better to skip it. You don't have to price everything that comes across. Politely declining the work and explaining your reasons in the email is generally a good thing to do. So a way that you can help with that is just really to track and report profit margins, because companies typically bid in patterns, consistently over or underestimating parts of a project. And if you can help identify what those patterns are, you can either A, adjust for those so that you get better at bidding over time, or B, just focus on finding the jobs that have the highest profit margins. What are your competencies and how can you find more work like that, because you're going to have more competitive pricing and still make it profitable. Other things to watch out for is high total dollar amount accounts, because it can make us margin blind. By identifying the highest margin clients or types of jobs and searching for that are often just trying to find the biggest job you can, because sometimes they have the lowest margins. So let them know what that stuff kind of looks like so they know how to go out and find the kind of work that's going to be best for their company. So next, we want to look at a quick one that's going to affect the bottom line, but gets overlooked pretty frequently. and that is just getting return bonded retention money. So completing projects on time enable the companies to claim back the retention money and recover bonds as soon as they possibly can. But sometimes project teams move so fast from one project to the next, they kind of forget to go back and claim it. So that costs the company money. That's just money sitting there that could come back and hit the bottom line. So maintaining a schedule of all outstanding retention monies and bonds so that they are tracked and returned is generally a best practice. And you guys can help with that kind of stuff because you know when the final invoice goes out. That's a good trigger to just kind of remind them, hey, did you get that stuff released? Did you get it back? So now we're going to talk about some common causes of failure. One of them is invoicing too slow or not invoicing at all. So it may seem obvious, but I am amazed how lax some contractors are at invoicing for the work they've actually completed. Invoices should be submitted right away, like the same day or the very next day is best. Just as important is to follow up and ensure that you have been paid. If you're not being paid on time, you're probably not going to be able to pay your subs and suppliers, and that's not good. That's going to impact your relationship with them, and it's probably going to jeopardize your future projects because they may or may not want to work with you. So not getting paid on time, that kills cash flow, and poor cash flow destroys companies. So keep on them, right? Recurring reminders can be really helpful for stuff like this. If you can get an outline of the project milestones and construction schedule, you can put that in your calendar as days to check in because you know when invoices are supposed to go out based on what milestones are supposed to be met. So if a milestone shows up on your calendar, but you haven't been asked, hey, we need to get an invoice out, that's a good indication that something has changed. Maybe it's scope creep. They've got outstanding invoice items that they did extra work on, but didn't tell anybody that it needs to be invoiced for. That's a good way to kind of check in and say, hey, what's going on? Is there anything outstanding that we can go ahead and take care of? Then the big one, negative cash flow. This is the biggest cause of companies' failings. Even profitable projects can sink a company if the cash flow goes negative. Got to have cash to pay everybody. If you don't have it, you kind of go under, right? That's how it works. I can't pay for the stuff that I need. It's kind of game over at that point. And especially in the in the construction business, because contractors often don't get paid right away, right? They have to finance work from one milestone to the next, and then they have to wait net for a year longer just to get the next infusion of cash. And the bigger the project, or the more project that the contractor is working on, the bigger the potential cash flow problems becomes. So it's absolutely critical that project managers and owners understand both the project and the company's cash flow. And they need to be really careful not to take projects on that will push their cash flow into the red unless they know they have the cash to carry the expenses until they get paid. So, of course, the big one, how can you help with that? Just keep putting that stuff out there. I mean, it's kind of funny that we keep hearing things over and over again, like, why do the totals on my P&L not equal my bank balance? It's just because they don't understand that part. So a big part of this is just keep on explaining it. Keep talking about it, get people to start thinking that way to make sure that they can stay in a cash flow positive position. And of course, remember, any chance you get, simple, pretty charts work best to get this kind of information across. It's also really helpful if you have a wonderful system like Nullify, because if they're using that every day, it's going to be difficult for them to even get into a position where they, oops, we have negative cash flow. I didn't see it coming. Well, if you're using something like Nullify, you're going to know it because dashboards are there, the reports are there, everything's there. But I'm going to guess you guys probably already knew that. So we'll move on and we'll talk about overcapitalizing. So construction industry tends to be boom or bust. It's feast or famine. In times where there's a lot of work coming in, contractors will go out and just assume that it's going to keep going like this, right? We've reached a new milestone. This is how business is going to be from here on out. So we'll go out and we're going to buy a bunch of new equipment and we're going to hire 1 million people so that we can take on more work. Well, but then the cycle just kind of ends and some of that work goes away, things slow down, and now you've got all this stuff around. People get really hungry and start underpricing work just to win enough so that they don't have machines and people standing around not doing anything. So overcapitalizing can be a problem. Growth needs to be done really cautiously because the good times will always come to an end at some point, and we need to be able to weather the storm until it picks back up again. So a good way to help with that is to remind everybody that wealth is measured in time, not in dollars. How many days from today can you proceed on forward with what you have without losing anything, right? What does future cash flow look like? Are there trends or work patterns in the ebbs and flow of the construction industry that can help you make predictions? You know, hey, everything looks good right now, but typically this time of year stuff starts to slow down. So maybe buying a new, you know, front-end loader, we should wait until spring. Scenario planning, really helpful for stuff like this, especially big capital outlays. So, you know, look at past purchases, or look past just the purchase. Also look at, you know, maintenance, the effects of downtime, anything like that. Can the machine be utilized? Anything you can do to project out and just bring those questions up when you know a big capital outlay is imminent. Good thing to do. Gets everybody thinking in the right place. Next, single dependency. So if you're unfamiliar with the term, it really is exactly what it sounds like, becoming too dependent on a particular customer or a particular market. When things are going smoothly, it's easy to just put stuff on cruise control, right? We're happy with our existing clients and the type of projects that we take on. We can even get stuck in just operating in one single niche market because it's so comfortable. But the world around us is changing all the time, right? New competitors are moving in, customers who were expanding and successful suddenly aren't anymore. So before we know it, the steady stream of work that we've become reliant on, it starts to dry up. We have to go out and find new projects, new customers, new markets. It's not fun if it happens and you didn't see it coming and you weren't prepared for it. That can put you in a very, very, very bad cash flow position. So construction companies should never become totally reliant on just one customer or one market. We need a little diversity in there. So a way that you can help them find that is really by following a lot of the previous stuff that we talked about and identify, you know, what is the best client or what does the best job look like? What has the highest margins? What are you most competent in doing? What are your people prepared to get done? What kind of equipment do you have or have access to that will let you do this kind of work? You know, find the fit for this particular company. I mean, even look for seasonal trends and try to say, okay, with the skill set we have, there's this kind of work that we can do in the summer, but then in the winter when it slows down, maybe we need to do something else, just to kind of fill out the calendar. But, you know, think about it, actively go after this stuff. It's not just going to show up and work out. On the same flip side of that coin is find areas where it's not a good fit. You know, where do we keep overbidding projects, or when do we end up in negative cash flow situations? Is there anything common about these? Maybe we just need to avoid that kind of work or those particular clients. With this kind of information, it's more likely for construction managers and, you know, the guys estimating everything to go out there and proactively look for the right kind of stuff instead of look for anything that shows up. And that's going to be a better way to find the diversity that they need to not be dependent on a single customer or market, because diversity is good, but profitable diversity is even better. So managing a construction company means keeping a whole lot of stuff in mind, but by keeping track of some of that stuff for them and helping them prioritize the rest of it, they should be more profitable and you should be more rock star. Speaking of increasing profits, 2 to 8% of payroll, particularly in this industry, is rounded time. And considering that payroll is one of the single, if not the single biggest expense most companies have, that 2 to 8% can be a very, very large number. On top of that, timesheets are just a huge pain in the butt because they're either late, they're missing, you can't read it, the details are wrong, all that kind of stuff. Payroll is kind of a pain, but don't worry, we have a fix for you. That is what ClockShark does. And we are specifically built for construction and field service companies. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we are and what we do. We are a powerful and easy to use time tracking system. We run on any app or any cell phone out there. We're app-based, so the employees can just take their phone out of their pocket when they get to the job site, clock in just a few taps, put the phone back in their pocket, they're off working. It can track time from absolutely anywhere, even if there's no signal. It'll still store everything locally, sync back up to the cloud later. Everything is in real time, so they always have their schedules, so they know where to be, when to be there, and where the location is. And you can even share files and photos between the field and the office, so everybody knows what's going on at any particular point in time. On the back end of that, you get down to the minute accurate timesheets, no more rounded time. You can save that 2 to 8% on payroll we were talking about a minute ago. You can also see who's working where right on a map. And you can do that on, we just released this last month in the web dashboard. You could always see that. Now you can see that right from the mobile app. So if you've got crew managers and leadership folks out in the field, they can check it right from there. You can also clock in multiple crew members with our manager permission. So if somebody forgets their phone, not a big deal. Or if the battery dies, it's okay. We can take care of it. Their supervisor or foreman can clock them in. And of course, at any time, every clock punch comes with a GPS coordinate. So you know exactly where people are and, you know, the attachments that they put on it at that particular point in time. ClockShark does integrate with QuickBooks, both QuickBooks Online and the desktop version of QuickBooks. And that integration goes both ways. So forget about double data entry. If it's in one system, it can be in both systems. So got to rekey that stuff. And the wonderful folks over at Notify have also created a way that you can copy and paste the time records right out of ClockShark straight in Notify. So if your clients are on Notify, and of course they all are, aren't they? Then adding ClockShark to this workflow is really simple. To be a breeze. Online, so if you're in that environment, it's going to be really easy to get all of the jobs and everything that you have in Notify right up into ClockShark so people can start tracking time against it right away. Last thing that I'd like to tell you about is the ACE Club. This is for accountants, bookkeepers, business consultants, people like yourself who have construction clients or trade clients. So what we want to do is we want you guys, when your clients are a really good fit for our product, to refer us. So in order to know whether it's a good fit, we've created the ACE Club so that you can get that information. You'll get a free ClockShark account that you can use for your business. It's not a restricted account. It's full. It's the same one that everybody else gets. You can put as many of your staff members on there. Try to see how it works. Get it out. Also, if you do refer a client and you're a member of the ACE Club, you can either get them a 20% discount or you can get a prize for yourself. $100 Amazon gift card or an Alexa or something like that. You get to pick your own. And of course, we also offer free training and any questions about that. I'd be more than happy to answer it, but you can also just go to our website, clockshark.com/ACE Club, or just scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page and you'll find the link for the ACE Club. Click on that, you can get more information about it and sign up for it. So that is my presentation. Are there any questions?
Reid, this is Richard.
Yep.
Your audio is going in and out a little bit right there at the end. If it's okay with you, I'd like to just repeat this last slide, or if you'd like to repeat this last slide, it was pretty garbled.
Yeah, it seemed
okay.
You're losing service or something, just a little bit towards the end there.
Well, I'm not sure what was going on. It sounds the same on my end. Why don't you go ahead and do it, Richard, in case it happens again?
Sure.
Because your connection sounds good.
Not a problem at all. So what Reid was saying is that in the ACE Club, we want you to be able and to feel very comfortable referring your clients over to ClockShark if it's a good fit for their scenario. We already know that this program was built from the ground up for construction folks, but we want you to really try it and really understand the simplicity and ease of use. So for all pro advisors who are listening today, we give, and even if you're not listening today, we give them a free ClockShark account. It's an unrestricted account that you can use in your firm with all of your employees and folks that work for you. You also get a 20% discount or a Amazon prize for yourself when you refer somebody to ClockShark and they convert to a paid account. In addition to that, we offer free training and free support, and you can sign up by going to www.clockshark.com/ACE Club, ACECLUB. And Denise is asking a question about whether ClockShark integrates with QuickBooks Desktop. Denise, yes, absolutely it does. In fact, the majority of clients for ClockShark are on the desktop platform because that's what most construction companies are still using because of job costing. So absolutely not a problem. And if you'd like a demo, just reach out and we'll make sure that you get all set up over at the ClockShark offices. Any other questions?
All right, cool. Well, thanks for the presentation, Reid. That was really good stuff. I feel like I'm probably going to send this recording to a couple of our clients who, you know, could use a little bit of help with their own businesses as well. Yeah, especially like the bit about, managing the cash flow. I think we actually have chatted with other apps like, Fundbox and a couple of the other ones who will help the contractors kind of get the money from their contracts a little bit earlier. And I think that's another great tool that could be used in this network.
Taryn, if you don't mind me
Yeah.
popping in, I think one of the bigger impact statements that can be made about just tracking time, especially on a construction project, those 5 minutes that people are clocking in late on the job sites. If you're seeing time cards that are coming in where somebody is working 8 to 5 consistently every day, that's not quite the reality. When you calculate it out, $20 per hour person, and most people are making more than $20 on construction sites, $20 per hour person, 5 minutes late every day, across the year, that's $455 per year that you're saving on that one person. So now multiply that out by a crew of 20, a crew of 40, a crew of 60, and you quickly realize the savings very quickly. So that's kind of my big takeaway with managing cash flow.
Yeah.
Using a product like ClockShark and then adding in Notify. The world is your oyster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. I think that's it. We do have one other question, Taryn, and it's, will the recording be available to attendees?
Yeah, of course. So just to give you guys a little bit more info on that, we do have a Notify YouTube channel that we'll post this to. But I'm also going to send this out to the Facebook group, and I'll be emailing it to everyone who is registered as a Notify advisor. For anyone who's not a part of our Construction Company Advisor Network Facebook group, we strongly recommend you join in. It's a great place to, get some questions in from me or anyone else who's in the network with some more experience. So, feel free to put in a request to join. I approve pretty quickly. I do have a question here from Horace. Can we recommend an approach to calculate and track critical path from within the programs? Yeah, I mean, I know Notify has some Gantt chart tools as far as, tracking critical path. I'm not as familiar with how ClockShark manages scheduling. Do you guys do critical path work, Reid?
The best way to answer that question is use Notify for that. Just, we can track time. We also have a scheduling tool and things like that. But really, if you're on the Notify platform, you're going to want to use that. They got better tools for that kind of stuff than we do. We really specialize on time tracking in the field. So that's how I'd answer that.
It's still the classic case of, when it comes to the time tracking side of things, you can definitely still be using ClockShark. As far as critical path scheduling goes, that's something that ends up being more job level anyway. Our corporate calendar is a great way to move around the total dates of jobs, and then within your plan and track section, which we could still import the time from ClockShark too. You could change the dates of individual phases of the job, set dependencies. Our scheduling isn't complex to the extent that it's going to move the job based off of the dependencies and move the dates, but we'll get there eventually. But it's definitely still somewhere you can set up the Gantt chart, set start to start, start to finish, et cetera. So, it just depends on what you're looking to get out of it.
So, Taryn, there was one other question that I want to call out for folks in case they're not looking at the chat. And Denise asked what the Facebook link was for the CCAN group. Now, CCAN stands for, Taryn?
It's Construction Company Advisor Network.
Construction Company Advisor Network. I've thrown in the chat the link to join that group.
Yeah,
if you just simply also go to Facebook and search for CCAN, it will pop up. It will be your first or second choice, depending upon if you accepted this invite today or not. So you can join the group that way.
Yeah, and feel free to join in. We, as much as we obviously are sponsors of CCAN, that is really just meant to be a general construction company advisor network for anything, construction related, which is why we love to bring in other apps like ClockShark here to chat. Just to give everyone kind of some closing comments on our next webinar that's coming up. We're hoping to bring in Permit Zone. This is one of our latest integrations. I believe I've mentioned them in the past, but basically they built this awesome tool where you can go on their website and submit a request, and they'll go fetch building permits from your local building department for you. It's an awesome feature that we generated, so you can set it up right through Notify. And if you're using our system, they'll do the first one for you for free, obviously at the cost of the permit. But if any of your clients have a really tough time actually getting the permits for all of their projects, this is going to be a nice way to automate and get a little bit more use out of their Notify account aside from all of the job costing features. We're liking to add as many of these little latch-ons as we can. So thanks everyone again for joining us today, and thanks again to Reid for presenting. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email directly. I'm always happy to answer, and I can always put you in touch with Reid if you don't have his info. I'll be sending out a recording and a follow-up email and all of that stuff a little bit later today or tomorrow morning. But other than that, thanks again, and you have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks, Darren.
All right, and
Yeah,
happy
thanks,
Halloween,
guys.
everyone.